So we've got the up and coming NuFish All England Championships here at Springvale Lakes, and we're excited and we know you're excited. But of course, some people have already been to practice, some people have already had a look at the venue, and some people who don't live too far away know the venue quite well. But we know for a fact that a lot of you are travelling from far and wide around the country. And so what we wanted to do is give you a bit of an insight into where we're going to be fishing and what that entails. Now, the lakes that we're including in the competition, there's 4 lakes, which is Newcastle, Golden 2, the Duke Lake, and the one behind me, the beautiful Duchess. And we've already got some videos out in circulation that we've done here in the past at Springvale. But we did a recent video with great angler Sam Collett, and he's got a great day catching lots of fish because this is such a fantastic venue. It's absolutely crammed with fish. There's loads of water to go at, nice open spaces, but we thought that we'd try and give you a little bit more of a detailed insight. So we're going to do a little series of videos where we visit all of those 4 lakes, including the one that Sam's done. I'm going to be doing one on Duchess later today, and then we're going to do one of our now famous old dog new tricks where the brilliant Joe Caris teaches me how to fish commercials, and we're going to probably do that on Newcastle, or it could be the Duke. And then we're going to get Joe to give you a real masterclass because he is the man at this kind of fishing, and he'll do the opposite one. So it'll either be myself or Joe that does Duke or Newcastle. So join us here at Springvale for a little insight into what you can expect on the up and coming NuFish All England Championships. So Duchess Lake at Springvale is one of the lakes where we've got a section of the All England Champs, and we will have 25 pegs on this lake. There's actually 30 pegs, permanent pegs, around this lake, and we've looked at that, and obviously to make sure that we can leave an odd corner and make sure people have got room to fish, to catch fantastic fish like that, we're only putting 25 pegs in. And you might not believe this, but I've actually only just started fishing, and I just said to Joe, we'll start fishing and talk while we fish, thinking it might take a little while to get a few bites. But I mean, I'm not even going to attempt to lift that one up, but that's a good 7 or 8 pound, and that's typical of the type of fish in Duchess. And we'll go into detail a little bit more, but I've just took that on a hard pellet on 3 pieces of pole basically. And this venue is absolutely amazing because it produces great catches, and this lake in particular is a big weight lake, and I'm not saying that one lake will dominate the rest, because the winner of the All England Championships could come from any of the 4 lakes, because that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to match up the lakes so that regardless of which one you draw, you've got a chance. But this one, if the sort of huge head of carp that I know are in them all sort of settle themselves in a couple of pegs, and that'll just increase the potential winning weight. Now I've just sat here in the middle. I'm on peg 6, I think it is. Can't see it because it's underneath my foot plate. And bang in the sort of middle of the lake, which I've got open water. You'll see there I'm fishing about 3.5 foot deep, because there's a nice shallow shelf here on this particular bank, and it goes from sort of 6 inches tight against the bank side, drops to about 2 foot, 2.5, 3 metres off the bank, and then down to 3.5 foot where I am. And it's sort of only sort of 4 foot deep out in the deep part of the lake. And I've got a couple of islands in front of me, as I've quite a lot of pegs on this lake, because there's 4 islands dotted all the way through, but lovely open water, which means that this particular lake is open to all methods. So you could be fishing, I don't know if that were a fish that just tried to take that as our orienting and trying to concentrate and talk and fish at the same time, but it'll lend itself to a variety of methods. You could be fishing margins, you could be fishing short pole, you can be fishing method feeder up to the islands, you could be fishing in open water, you could be fishing long and shallow if the fish are feeding that particular way. Pellet waggler comes into it. That's the beauty of all these lakes, because they're not narrow strip sort of snake type lakes. Then it means you've got open water to go at, and you can pretty much, I'm saying, choose your method of fishing to suit either the conditions on the day or even the style that you want to fish in. And as you'll notice, obviously, from looking around the lake, there's a lot of anglers here today, as is the popularity of Springvale, and they've all been catching fish while we've been setting up. So we know for a fact this is going to be a brilliant place to host a match. Now, tackle wise, I think that the fact that there's a lot of silverfish in the lakes, you can still catch those on sort of the heavier lines that you might need for carp fishing, and not necessarily having to fish too light or too light elastics, because there's always a good colour in the water here. And I think that's due to the fact that they're beautiful open lakes and they catch a bit of wind and the water keeps moving. I think that's what makes the fish so feisty and so healthy, but it always keeps the water coloured. Don't lose them like I've just done. If I looked, it's probably bad feeding that. Joe would have caught that one in the mouth. That's probably what keeps the water so coloured and also allows the fish to feed so confidently. And, you know, I've just decided to fish in a simple way just to start off, but typical, and trying to be sort of giving you an idea of what's possible without any special tricks. But I know that if we fish a feeder up to those islands, we'll catch fish, and if we fish shallow in open water, we catch fish, and later down the margin. So what I was saying about the silverfish is that there's a massive head of those, and you've got typical Springvale stock, which is chub, skimmers, eyed, the odd tench. You'll find a few roach, but not particularly many. And there are an amount of small carp in these lakes as well, because the management here at Springvale keep the stock fresh and try and make sure that they've got multiple generations of fish. So you could catch carp from £1 well into double figures. And that's the beauty of it, that gives variety and means that it's just not a one-stop shop or one peg dominates everything, because there's enough fish to go around. You know, if the carp are on the wind or if the small fish are out of the wind, you've still got opportunities to catch fish, which I think is a great advantage in a match. That it's not, oh, you've got to be on an island, or you've got to be in open water, or you've got to be in a corner, such is the layout of Duchess. That with those islands, it kind of mixes the lake up quite a bit. Fantastic lake.
It's a fairly model, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Lovely silverfish like that. So I mean, that brings probably £2 getting up that way. No, it certainly will be. Cracking fish, which you can see why the weights of silvers here are really good backup weights to the big carp. And I know for a fact that the venue record is over £200 of silvers, which is amazing, really. There's not many venues that can happen on. But that's what balanced stock creates, because, as I said, sometimes carp tend to gather and they might be windward, you know, one end of the lake. And the beauty of having varying stock levels is that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, and you don't need many carp of that size, bream of that size to equal a carp, of course. And you know, we're just still having to persevere. I mean, I think the fish are quite shallow today, so I've noticed that when I'm putting my pellets in, I'm getting an odd swirl and an odd line bite. So it might be that we have to fish completely different, because that's the thing, isn't it, that it might not be fishing on the day in this depth. It might have to come shallower. We've had a lot of warm weather prior to coming today. You know, the water's warm. It's probably been warm for 2.5 weeks, so these fish are very active and up in the water. But we just thought we'd start it off simple and just get a feel for bites. And you can see, obviously, we've had a carp and a bream and far hooked a carp and lost that one. But a great start to a little session here. And that proves my suspicions that these fish are certainly shallower in the water than we've started fishing at, because that actually took that on the drop, and I presume that it was foul hooked, because I were only halfway down the lowering my floating when it basically snaffled it. So that's took it on the drop. So it's probably time to fish shallow or move closer into the shallower margins, because these fish are obviously hungry and wanting to feed, and we're probably just fishing in the wrong place. So let's address it. So quick change, and basically I've picked up, I was fishing with a 4/16 Fury on the deck out there, and I set up a 4/14, basically the next size down Fury, and I plumbed it up at around 2 foot before we started fishing, which is probably nearly 3 meters off the bank, because, as I mentioned, it's quite a shallow margin. And what I mean by that is that there's not a steep shelf. It don't just go down like that and goes like that. It just slopes away. And there's a few of the banks on some of these lakes, including the Match, that are like that. But this one is particularly like that. And so I basically found what I think is a good fish catching depth. Wow. In that 2 foot. And there's another double figure fish. And that was first go down that inside margin. And so when we say margin, it's an interesting point to note that we're not tight against the bank. And I've just tapped in again. Look at that, a cracking fish. The fishing in such good condition here. And I tapped in half a dozen 6mm. And just fished a banded 6 over the top. Same again, I've got a 14, that's a 9/11 hook, and that's tied to the 018. exact, and I've got pink, which might be a little bit OTT. I think with the fish here, they are big, but I think you could probably get away with a green or a blue. But if you are looking to get on top of these big fish, then obviously it is an elastic that'll get on top of them. It'll gaffer them. So that's just, you can see how far away from the bank that is. Not particularly what some people call margin fishing, but it's the right depth, because we went in, had a good clean bite, and away we went. Sometimes you've got to be careful not to fish in too shallower water, which is something I've learnt from Joe Caris on our recent series of videos, that although the fish will come into the really shallow water in the margin, they're not easy to catch. So try and find a depth that they're comfortably feeding at, and that were a fish when I was just lowering my bait in then. And fish there, don't try and make them come into too shallow water, because you'll just get a lot of liners, a lot of foul up fish, and ultimately you just won't catch them. You probably need to add a back shot to that rig as well, because it were a freshly made rig. It still amazes me how little sometimes you've got to feed, which is another trick that Joe's actually put me onto. That when you're not fishing for a million bites, then why do you need tons and tons of bait? Catching these carp is, sometimes it's fish, feed for one and catch one, and fish for another and take each one as it comes, rather than trying to fill your swim up. I'm just going to pop a back shot on that rig, because it's driving me crazy. That little ripple, just don't feel comfortable having me float sat right, so I'm just going to drop a couple of number 8 stocks on the back of it. Well, that's certainly a better way of presenting it, although I made a bit of an ash of trying to catch that fish, because that was certainly a fish that picked my bait up, and then back shots are just holding that float. Because we've got a slight ripple, it's just giving me a bit of surface disturbance, so that shot's just taking the swing out of that rig. And I should have caught that last one, but a few more indications now. I don't know if the fish are get more confident because we're tapping a bit more bait in. And certainly once come to them pellets, I just saw it boil, and I think that were more of a tail pattern than it were a surface fish, which beginning to make me think that it is right. I think we need to feed an amount of pellets for every bite. And there's one, look. And that is certainly hooked. Joe's system with the adjuster bead at the back kicking in just gives you that extra little bit of elastic. And even though I was saying earlier that this elastic might be one step too heavy, that is certainly testing it, I can assure you. Big fish. Although I'm not convinced that it's fair and squarely hooked is the truth, but we'll soon find out. I've got an awful feeling that that's not hooked in the mouth, but I'll play it accordingly, because that is really giving that elastic a good run for its money. So fit, the fish here at Springvale. And as I mentioned, I think that's because they're all well looked after. Good fishery management. The weighing system they've got. And they're very, very active creatures. Yeah, that's not in the mouth. And they're hard enough to catch when they're in the mouth, never mind when we flanked them. Immaculate condition, that fish. It's probably because it's too cute to get caught normally. Pop him back. And it's funny because you kind of go, oh, it's not right, it's not right. But I tell you that the biggest thing I've realised is you ain't got to catch a carp every choke. No. Even though it feels like you have. That last them. Well, the big fish are certainly in this area today because I've just hooked another one down that edge after landing that one that weren't up properly, but this one actually took it on the fall, so I am actually beginning to think that the fish just aren't on the bottom today, and it might be a case of just picking an odd one off either shallow or just a case of being patient, because like I've said, you don't have to catch many of these to build a weight. But there's another. I tell you what, they don't half pull. That one should have been in the bag. Andy May would have had that one. And there's a reason why you get him first time, because otherwise you finish up wrestling with them, don't you? Feisty creatures. But it just proves that they do want them pellets. Look at this thing. Cracking fish. And certainly they're fishing in shallow water, and another place that we've got shallow water in this peg is across against one of those islands. So what I'm actually going to do is just have a go over there, because I think if I were fishing a match scenario and I'd drawn this particular peg, I would start on a method. But I just wanted to fish comfortably while we chatted to you and start this little session off on Duchess in a way that you're probably going to be looking to fish. So let's just have a chuck up against that island and see what fish are there, because I think we'll find that that's the right depth for the fish out there as well, in nice shallow water. So just get that ready. So I've just loaded this small method with the Fishery 2 mils, which I basically prepared on the bank when I got here, and all I did was just to I just submerged the pellets for, well, that were quick, I ain't even got time to talk to you. I just submerged the pellets for 2 minutes, underwater and then put them to drain straight away, which allowed them just to soak. But you know, I think when I'm fishing a method with micros, I like to prepare my pellets as soon as possible. So when you come on the day, my advice is to get yourself some micros and just prepare them as soon as you can, and that gives you more chance to get the feel right. 'Cause you just want them to be able to just bind like that, and they're perfect. Especially when you're fishing in shallow water like that, and you want to get the fish to get access to your bait very quickly, because they want to feed today, and when fish are in this mood, it's quite common that you do catch fish as quick as that in shallow water, because I think the fish are quite confident up against that island, and they were straight onto that method. And I've just put a 6mm pellet on, just like I did on the pole, because they're obviously happy eating the 6mm. And it's just a simple banded. And as a simple person myself, and you probably saw on that last Old Dog No Tricks that we did, I just tied a load of these hooks off to 12-inch. So that's a 14-911. Fishing up against these islands could be a real good way to win, and with Newcastle, Golden Spring, Duke and Duchess, there'll be the majority of pegs will actually have an island chuck. There'll be a few open water pegs on Duke, but ultimately there'll be a lot of pegs where you can reach an island. Newcastle especially. These fish are certainly very active today. That nearly pulled my rod in. So, as suspected, the shallow water over near the island is certainly where some of these carp are holding out. So, on a warm day like we've got today, which we'll probably find mid-August, you know, it's a great time for catching fish. We'll probably have a similar sort of conditions. The fish will be hungry, they'll want to feed. That one certainly wants to pull as well. And fishing very simply, like I have, which is I basically got some 2mm, some 6mm, and some 8mm if I were going to fish bomb and pellet or pellet waggler. You know, you might use 6s or 8s, but I've still got one of those 6mm on the hook, which, you know, it clearly is a great bait, but you might want to use your wafters, and you might want to fish with maggots, because you will catch everything. There's that many fish in here, skimmers, eyed, chub, and you will catch the carp on them. Casters, worms, whatever your choice is. You know, you can use a bit of ground bait and dead maggot. That'll work really well. We've just tried to simplify it today for you and just show you that the fish in here are certainly good quality, and certainly want to fight back. So we'll talk you through the sort of rigs that I would prepare, the sort of hook lengths, just to give you some insight into a bit of preparation. And it'll generally be similar sort of tackle for older lakes, but when you're encountering fish like this, you certainly need to be geared up right. Because they do want to pull back. This one's no exception. The right gear is essential when you fish a fighting like this one is. This is £8 detection reel line, great for durability, and the 181 exact hook length. He's definitely not happy. He probably thought he was safe against that island, didn't he? And this is just a... Don't suppose you'd have to be worried if I were in this match, because I'd spend all day playing this fish and not catch anything. Well, don't ask me why on earth it took me so long to net that fish. It just did. But he's got a great big paddle on him. I was beginning to think he weren't tucked in the mouth, but he is. Right there. He just decided that he wanted to use those big paddles of his. So they're the sort of fish that obviously we're catching on a method feeder and a pole. So we'll get a quick rundown of the rigs and a bit of kit that you're likely to need. And hopefully, if you draw on Duchess, this will be a great little way to set you up before you come. So hopefully that's give you a little insight into the creatures that live here in Duchess. But generally, you know, you're going to catch a variety of fish. I think we've just obviously been on the right side of the lake or the right area today, and the big carp are obviously in front of us, and we've caught them across against the island, obviously out in front of us and short. I think we probably did it all in the wrong order, but it was just a case of genuinely throwing some tackle down and giving you an insight. So it's not sort of an orchestrated, scripted thing that we've done. We just sat down and fished. So you're going to want to prepare for the All England Championships, and generally at Springvale what we're probably been using today is relevant on most of the lakes. If you want to target the larger of silverfish, then you're probably going to want slightly lighter floats. You're probably going to want floats to fish from the bottom up to shallow, because the hide will be incredible, and you're probably going to want to look at fishing with like a white zip with, you know, a 10 to 12 or an 8 to 10, and that will just give you that softness that you need. 16 hooks, you know, the 148 diameter line for hook lengths, that'll probably cover you for everything, because you will catch a big weight of those maggots, casters, worms, that sort of thing. But if you're looking to target the fish that we've been catching today, then I would recommend, as I had on earlier, I had our 14-16 green zip elastic. My rigs, I would certainly think for carp fishing, the 203, like the 020, or the 23 diameter, that I think is great for durability. You're certainly not going to be overgunned fishing those sort of diameter lines. And then 016 or 18 hook lengths I think will suffice you, because it's nice open water. You're not going to be fishing against any snags or lily beds or that type of thing. It's a well structured fishery. And then float wise, I suppose, you know, because it is open, you need to just consider that you might need something like a collet float, which is slightly more stable, up to probably 0.5, half a gram, or a 4/16 equivalent, that type of float with a nice 2.5mm bristle, and that'll allow you to fish hard pellet on the deck. that sort of thing. If you were corn angler or that type of bait, that is perfect sort of float for that. And then you'll, as you saw earlier, I had a 4/16 for stability, a Fury, and then 4/14s for the margins. Some people might like to fish a 4/12s. I think it's important to have control over your rigs. So really simple way of fishing. And then I think, you know, I'd make sure I got a few shallow floats like a clunk that we've had there and a big head, so you can catch these fish up in the water. But it really is going to be a dead straightforward, simple match. Having fished here a little while, obviously on this video for you, I think if I drew this peg today and I had the hindsight of what I've got now, which you have with this video, I think I would start against the island. I might feed a shallow line, sort of 13 metres or a bit further if you want to do it with a rod and line, and then I would look to fish in 2 foot back, probably back to about 18 inches of depth in the edge. Hard pellet were great there. You might want to fish dead maggot with ground bait, but just be mindful that there's a lot of silverfish. They're good fish, you know, they're £1, £2 fish, but ultimately if you want to catch these bigger sort of match winning carp, then hard pellet's got to be a great way to go. So hopefully that's helped you. I've certainly enjoyed it, and what's more important is we can't wait to see you on the day, and hopefully you'll enjoy Springvale and the All England Championships as much as what we will. So we'll see you then.